February is the month of love.
Yes, it is. Love your home, right?
It's love your home. That's certainly what we talk about all February. And, in some cases, existing homeowners really, need to maybe put a little bit more love in their home. Or maybe you should really love where you live. And I think that's a conversation that we've certainly been having the last couple of years, Todd. People I think are right sizing their homes.
Yeah.
The way people are living has changed. And, I think the mortgage piece is certainly one piece of loving your home. You want to really have the best mortgage you can have. I think that maybe increase your love a little bit. But, there's certain things you can do to your home and maybe love it a little bit more. And maybe you can leverage the equity. And maybe that's a conversation that we can have around, potentially refinance.
Yep.
And there's certainly a lot of people who are doing renovations. I think a lot of people are doing renovations this year and have done, renovations in even last year.
Yeah, something that, and not to be a downer on love, but part of this obviously are partnerships and marriages and all of that stuff. And perhaps later in the show we can talk about when people enter these relationships, these contracts, because in a way it is a contract.
Just like a mortgage would be
just
a
like
contract.
a mortgage is a contract. And I think maybe we could, not to be buzzkills about Valentine's, but we could delve into how people should go into these things with their eyes open, because as you witness on a daily basis, I'm sure these things break down sometimes, right?
I would say 50% of the files that we work on have a family component involved, Todd.
Yeah.
I get people's separation agreements and, divorce agreements and court orders and interim orders and all these things every single day. So, I don't have a law background, but I certainly have read a lot of separation agreements.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean anything to me. I mean, I see everything. But it certainly does have an impact. And, February, hopefully it's still unicorns and rainbows and everything.
Yeah, but that's not life, right? Sometimes.
And Cupid and all these things. But, that's not life. And I think that we need to be, cognizant of that. A lot of relationships do break down.
Yeah. All right. So perhaps we can save that for our last segment.
I think that's certainly something really important to talk about. And I think that's a conversation to have in February. And how can you prepare yourself?
Yeah, we'll do that in the last segment. So I guess we should tee this up and just we have new listeners all the time. We're new in Ottawa, obviously. So why don't you just kind of to let everybody know about some of the things that you've done in this business for and how long, because not everybody knows Clinton. Right?
Yeah, I think we'll continue kind of doing this intro, at least for the first couple of shows.
Yeah.
The first show that we were on in Ottawa was last year. We've been doing the show here in Halifax for the last 4 years, and even before that in a different format on CityNews and the predecessor News 95.7. I'm a mortgage broker. I live and work, and I'm from Nova Scotia. And, I've been in the industry for 16 years. It seems like yesterday. I was fresh out of university. I can remember even like the first transactions that I've done. I even remember these transactions. And a lot of those clients are still my clients today. About 60% of the transactions that we do every day are existing clients, like you and me. But 40% of the transactions that we do are new clients. So we're seeing new clients every day, which I think is really, really cool. Certainly, we're seeing a lot of first-time home buyers, and we're seeing a lot of people who maybe own their existing home and are looking at doing, a refinance or a renewal or, lots of different types of transactions. We have people that are buying rental properties and cottages. And, primarily here in our office, we do residential mortgage lending. Majority of the transactions we do are, prime, bank-style deals. This is what we do every day. But because we do have such a great team here, and, we have, 6 mortgage brokers now.
Yep.
And lots of support staff. Like, we have as many support staff as we do mortgage brokers here. We are doing a lot of different types of transactions. Yeah. And, I think leveraging the amount of transactions that we're doing is really very good for clients because you're probably getting a slightly better rate from us than maybe you would from, Joe Blow down the street.
Or the bank, or just the bank.
That's really what I mean. Like Joe Blow Blank. When you walk into the bank branch, obviously they only have so much buying power. And I think just, our volume, we are able to, leverage.
40 some lenders, right?
Yeah, with 40 some lenders. Yeah. We do majority of our business with 5 lenders, Todd.
Yeah, but you still have that versatility if you need it.
100%. Yeah. And, that's why leaning on a brokerage like us that has the experience, we know when to hold them and we know when to fold them. So that's one thing. Yeah. But we know when a file will work with certain different lenders. And it's not that we're so busy that we'll just try like one thing and give up and say, no, this isn't doable. We know when it's going to work and when it won't. And typically what we say, every Canadian can get a mortgage, right?
It's just how much you want to pay.
It's how much do you want to pay in terms of a rate,
Yeah.
and how much skin do you want to put in terms of the the equity position or the down payment. So, we're able to work through these things, and we look at income and credit and assets every single day.
All right, so it's the month of love. So you love this business. Obviously, you've done it for a long time. You've been very successful at it.
I mean, 16 years.
Yeah, 16 years.
There's been times I've wanted to quit, though, Todd.
Well,
I'll be honest with you, just like anything.
Who hasn't, right? Mm-hmm. So what is it, I guess, if you had to define, and you've already kind of touched on it, what is it that you love about this business?
I think that every day is a different day.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I also think that, helping clients is really rewarding. Obviously this is, a good business, and I've invested a lot of my time, my heart, and my energy into doing mortgage lending, learning, teaching, training. I wrote a book on mortgage lending, as you know.
What's it called again?
Confessions of a Halifax Mortgage Broker. And it's actually available on Amazon. It's available in, select.
So people in Ottawa can find it?
Oh, yeah. They can just go on Amazon. You can actually order a paper copy right from Amazon.com, and they'll put it right in your mailbox.
Yeah. That's how much but that's the point. That's how much you love this
and
business.
it's a book for consumers.
Yeah.
It's not a book for mortgage brokers. It's not a book for bankers or industry people. It's a book for consumers. And it tells my story, and it also tells a story of some of my clients and kind of their experiences and their situations and how we were able to make it work. So, I believe in mortgage lending. Obviously, we do this show. And I think this is the only show of its kind in this format, at least in Canada. I'm sure there's podcasts and stuff like this, but I think, on a news radio station, this might be the only one.
4 years running?
For 4 years running.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of conversations about like wild and different things, and like so many little like micro niches, and I think that's really cool. But what's really interesting about what I do every day, every single client that I see is like a snowflake. And February, we're still in the winter. I can tell you there's probably a little bit of snow outside in Halifax. Some of that's turned ice. And there's probably some snow in Ottawa. Yeah. Super cold. Every file is like a snowflake. And it's just so unique. And every day it's a challenge. And I just love getting up. And there's nothing more that I would rather do than help customers and talk about mortgage lending all day long.
What do you want to talk about in the next segment? What do you think that people really need to know about the month of love?
Well, I think they really need to know, obviously, we want to talk a little bit about what happens when love doesn't happen anymore, i.e. matrimonial breakdown.
We're going to do that at the last segment.
We're going to do that at the
end. Said that,
I think we also need to talk about how can you love your existing home and maybe look at ways to improve it, and how can you potentially love a new home. So we're going to certainly talk about these things, and hopefully you stay tuned and stay warm and
speaking of people, if they love what they do, their employment as well is hugely important here as well, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You got to be able to pay that mortgage for that 25 years, right?
Exactly. And I mean, that's certainly a part of, loving your life, maybe, Todd, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's all part of the attitude, right?
100%.
Yeah. And do you love your help here, your producers here? Do you love
I think we have some of the best team for this show.
You want to give them a shout out? You never do.
I mean, I think I give them shout outs all the time.
Never.
Maybe what we should do is we're recording this right now, and we're doing a video, and it's going to be on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram and all these things. Maybe we'll do a little reverse photo. So the folks from home, if you're listening, you can tune in and you can see a photo and you can see our setup.
There you go. All right. So we'll be right back here in City News 95.7 and in Ottawa as well. Mortgage 101 continues.